What if I told you that on Christmas Eve, a millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash, and what she said to him that night changed both their lives forever? Snow fell gently across the quiet streets of the city, covering everything in a soft white glow. Houses were decorated with sparkling lights, Christmas trees glimmered in living room windows, and families gathered around fireplaces, their laughter spilling into the night. But not everyone had warmth that evening. Ethan Westwood, a millionaire single dad, drove home after finishing last-minute shopping for his daughter, Lily. His luxury car hummed smoothly down the street, but his heart was restless. Christmas wasn't the same since his wife had passed away years ago. He did everything to give Lily a happy childhood, but deep down, the house always felt too quiet. As he stopped near a small bakery to grab hot chocolate for Lily, his eyes caught a sight that froze him. A young woman, shivering in thin clothes, knelt beside a trash bin. Her hands trembled as she pulled out scraps of food, a half-eaten sandwich, a bruised apple. She brushed the snow off it and held it close, her face pale, her eyes tired. Ethan sat in his car, torn. He could have just looked away, most people would have, but something about her, her dignity, even in desperation, made him roll down his window. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The woman looked up, startled. For a moment, shame flickered in her eyes, and she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't want anyone to see me. I'm hungry." And those few words, spoken on Christmas Eve, would change Ethan's life forever. Ethan stepped out of his car, the cold air biting against his skin. The woman's cheeks were flushed red from the freezing wind, her fingers stiff as she tried to hold the scraps of food she had found. "Wait," he said softly, holding out his hand. "You shouldn't be out here in this weather. You'll freeze." The woman shook her head quickly. "I'll be fine. Please, just leave me alone." But her lips trembled, and Ethan could see she wasn't fine at all. "My name is Ethan," he said gently, trying to make his voice calm, not intimidating. "Look, I'm not here to judge you. I can't drive away knowing you're out here on Christmas Eve with nothing." Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to blink them back. "Why would you care? No one else does." Ethan hesitated for only a second before speaking firmly. "Because I have a daughter waiting at home, and if she were ever in your shoes, I'd pray someone would care enough to help her." The woman's lips parted, shocked by his words. For the first time, she looked at him fully. Her eyes were tired, but carried a depth of pain he couldn't ignore. "Come with me," Ethan said finally. "It's Christmas Eve. At least, let me give you a warm meal." She shook her head. "I can't. I don't belong in your world." "You belong somewhere better than this," Ethan replied. Then he added softly, "Please, for tonight." After a long silence, her shoulders slumped. She whispered, "My name is Grace." And with that, Ethan led Grace to his car. She stepped in nervously, clutching her thin coat around her as if she didn't deserve the comfort. As the car pulled away, the snow kept falling, erasing the tracks of where she had once stood. Grace didn't know it yet, but that single decision to accept his invitation was about to change her entire life. When they arrived at Ethan's home, Grace's breath caught in her throat. The house stood like something out of a Christmas story, warm lights twinkling in every window, wreaths on the doors, and the faint sound of carols drifting through the air. For a woman who had been living in the cold shadows of alleys and shelters, the sight was overwhelming. Grace hesitated at the doorstep, her hands trembling. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. Ethan gave her a reassuring nod. "You're exactly where you need to be tonight." He pushed open the door, and a wave of warmth, laughter, and the smell of cinnamon filled the air. Little footsteps came running from the living room, and in a moment, a bright-eyed girl of 7 appeared, her hair tied in a messy ponytail, wearing reindeer pajamas. "Daddy!" she squealed, throwing her arms around his waist. Then she froze, her big brown eyes moving to the stranger standing in the doorway. Grace shifted uncomfortably, wishing she could disappear. Children, she thought, always saw too much. Ethan said gently, crouching down to her level, "Lily, this is my friend Grace. She's joining us for Christmas Eve." The little girl tilted her head, studying Grace with innocent curiosity. "Hi," Lily said, brightly. "You look cold. Do you want my blanket?" Without waiting for an answer, she dashed to the couch, picked up her favorite red blanket with snowflakes, and hurried back to wrap it around Grace's shoulders. Grace's eyes widened. No one had touched her with such kindness in a long, long time. She tried to protest, her voice cracking. "Sweetheart, you don't have to." "But I want to," Lily said firmly, smiling. "Daddy always says Christmas is about sharing. You can sit by the fire with me." Ethan's heart swelled at his daughter's words. He had worried about bringing Grace home, unsure how Lily would react, but now he realized children had a way of seeing hearts, not appearances. Grace lowered herself onto the couch slowly, still clutching the blanket. Lily sat right beside her, chatting about the cookies they had baked earlier and how she had left extra milk for Santa. For the first time in years, Grace let herself smile. It was small, fragile, but real. And as Ethan watched the two of them together, something stirred deep inside him. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas Eve was not about what he had lost, but about what he was about to gain. The dining room was glowing with soft golden light. A long oak table stood ready, draped with a red and green checkered cloth, candles flickering in the center, and plates full of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. The air carried the rich scent of Christmas dinner, a fragrance Grace hadn't experienced in years. She stood at the doorway, almost paralyzed. The table was too perfect, too inviting. For her, dinner usually meant scraping leftovers from dumpsters or queuing at a shelter where meals were rushed and silent. She felt she didn't belong in this picture of warmth. Ethan noticed the way her hands trembled. Quietly, he stepped to her side. "Grace, you're family tonight. Sit with us." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that pierced straight through her guarded heart. Family. She hadn't heard anyone use that word for her in years. Lily was already at the table, patting the empty chair beside her. "Come on, I saved you the best seat, right next to me," she chirped. Slowly, Grace walked to the chair, her steps heavy with hesitation. She lowered herself into the seat, clutching the blanket Lily had given her, as if it were the only thing tethering her to this unfamiliar kindness. The meal began with laughter and chatter. Lily proudly explained which cookies she had decorated, pointing out the ones with way too many sprinkles. Ethan listened with patience, his smile gentle. Grace, however, barely touched her plate. She watched, listened, and tried to swallow the lump in her throat. Memories came rushing back of a childhood Christmas long ago, when her parents had decorated a tree, when her mother's laughter had filled the room. Life had been simple then, before hardship stole everything. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. But Lily noticed. "Are you sad?" she asked softly, tilting her head. Grace forced a shaky smile. "No, sweetheart. Just grateful." I never thought I'd sit at a table like this again." Ethan's eyes met hers across the table. He didn't speak, but his gaze said everything. "You deserve to be here." For the first time in years, Grace took a real bite of warm food, and with each taste, it wasn't just her hunger that was being fed, it was her soul. By the time dinner ended, the loneliness she had carried like a shadow felt a little lighter. And though she didn't realize it yet, this meal wasn't just dinner. It was the beginning of a second chance. After dinner, the three of them moved into the living room. The Christmas tree sparkled with golden lights and ornaments that Lily had carefully hung over the past weeks. At its base, gifts were stacked neatly, brightly wrapped in reds and silvers, tied with glittering ribbons. Grace sat quietly on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, watching the warmth of the scene unfold. She hadn't expected more than a meal, much less to be part of a family's holiday. But when Lily rushed to the tree, her small hands searching excitedly, Grace felt a tug at her heart. "Daddy, can she open one too?" Lily asked, pointing toward Grace. Her eyes sparkled with innocence, as if kindness was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan smiled softly. "Of course." Lily dug under the tree until she pulled out a small box wrapped in blue paper. She carried it carefully to Grace and placed it in her lap. "This one's for you. We picked it out together." Grace froze, her throat tightening. "From me?" she whispered, as though the words were too heavy to say out loud. "Yes," Ethan said, his voice steady but tender. "Everyone deserves a gift on Christmas." Her fingers trembled as she unwrapped the paper. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple but beautiful. Hanging from it was a tiny charm in the shape of a star. "It's so you'll always remember," Lily said proudly, "that even when it's really dark, there's still light." Grace's eyes brimmed with tears. For years, no one had thought of her. No one had handed her anything except suspicion or pity. And here was this little girl giving her something precious. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She clasped the bracelet onto her wrist, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Thank you. This is the first gift I've opened in over 10 years." Silence followed for a moment, but it wasn't empty. It was thick with emotion. Ethan reached over, covering her hand with his. His grip was warm, steady. "Grace, you don't have to live in the shadows anymore. Not tonight, not ever again." And for the first time in a very long time, Grace felt a spark of something she had thought she'd lost forever: hope. The house had grown quiet after the excitement of the evening. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, curled under a soft blanket, her small hand still clutching the ribbon from a gift. The Christmas lights glowed softly in the corner, filling the room with a golden hush. Grace sat near the fire, staring into the flames. The bracelet on her wrist shimmered as she twisted it nervously. Ethan sat across from her, a glass of water in his hands, waiting. He could sense something heavy pressing on her heart, something she had carried far too long. Finally, Grace spoke. Her voice was so faint it nearly disappeared under the crackle of the fire. "I wasn't always like this. On the streets, I mean." Ethan leaned forward, listening. "I used to have a home, a job, a family," she said, her lips trembling. "But life has a way of stripping things away, piece by piece. I trusted the wrong people. My husband, he was supposed to love me, protect me. Instead, he left me with nothing. No money, no place to go. And when I turned to the people I thought were friends, she shook her head, eyes glassy. They turned their backs. Her hands clutched at the bracelet, as if it anchored her. At first, I tried to fight. I applied for jobs, slept on couches, told myself it was temporary, but weeks turned into months, and eventually, the world stopped seeing me as a person. I was just invisible, a shadow, digging through trash cans on nights like this. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and unrelenting. Do you know what it feels like, Ethan, to walk past a window on Christmas and see families laughing, eating, celebrating, and know you don't belong anywhere? Her voice cracked. That you don't matter to anyone? Ethan's chest tightened. He set down his glass, moving closer. Without hesitation, he placed a gentle hand over hers. Grace, you matter. Maybe those people couldn't see it, but I do. Lily does. You're not invisible here. Her tears fell harder, but they were different now, less of despair, more of release. She hadn't told her story in years, not once. Yet somehow tonight, with this man and his little girl, the walls inside her had finally broken. You don't know what it means to be seen again, she whispered. Ethan held her gaze, steady and warm. Maybe I don't, but I know what it means to be lonely, to want to protect someone and not know how. And I know that tonight, I don't want you to leave, not when there's finally a chance to start over. Grace looked at him, her heart trembling with both fear and longing. For the first time in years, she let herself believe in the possibility of tomorrow. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight, its chime echoing through the quiet house. Grace wiped her tears, embarrassed by how much of herself she had revealed. But Ethan didn't let go of her hand. He held it gently, grounding her in a way she hadn't felt in years. He took a deep breath, his eyes steady. Grace, I don't believe in accidents. You weren't meant to be out there in the cold tonight. You were meant to be here, with us. She shook her head softly. You don't know what you're saying, Ethan. You barely know me. But he smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Sometimes it doesn't take years to know someone. Sometimes it only takes a moment to see their heart. He glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully on the couch. My daughter trusts you, and I do too. Grace's lips trembled. She had lived for so long with suspicion, with rejection, with doors closing in her face. Now, here was this man, a stranger just hours ago, opening his home, his heart, offering her something she thought was lost forever, belonging. Ethan stood and walked toward the Christmas tree. He bent down, carefully lifting one last gift that had been tucked away in the back, a plain white box wrapped in silver ribbon. He carried it to her and placed it in her lap. Grace stared at it, confused. What is this? Open it, he said softly. With trembling hands, she untied the ribbon. Inside was a set of keys. She looked up, bewildered. These are to the guest house, Ethan said, firm but gentle. It's warm, it's safe, and it's yours, for as long as you need. No more streets, no more trash cans. You'll never spend another Christmas alone. Grace's breath caught in her chest. She pressed her hand over her mouth as tears welled in her eyes again. Ethan, I can't. You've already done too much. You can. he insisted, leaning closer. And you will, because everyone deserves a second chance. And tonight, Grace, this is yours. Her vision blurred with tears as she clutched the box to her chest. The fire crackled, the tree lights glowed, and for the first time in years, Grace felt the weight of hopelessness lift from her shoulders. She whispered, barely able to speak through the emotion in her throat. This is a miracle." Ethan smiled softly. "No, Grace, you are the miracle. You walked into our lives tonight and gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. That's the greatest gift of all." And as the snow fell silently outside, two broken souls, one who had lost everything and one who thought he had it all, found a new beginning under the glow of a Christmas tree. The first rays of dawn slipped through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. Grace stirred, the warmth of the blanket and the faint smell of cinnamon filling her senses. For a moment she panicked, confused by the comfort, the safety. Then she remembered. Ethan, Lily, the fire, the keys. She sat up slowly in the cozy guest house bed, her hands brushing over the quilt as if to make sure it was real. She hadn't woken up in a bed, an actual bed, in months. The mattress seemed to hug her body, and the silence wasn't filled with the usual chill of the streets, but with birdsong. On the small nightstand sat a tray, a steaming mug of coffee, a warm croissant, and a little note in Lily's handwriting, written in big, uneven letters. "Good morning, Miss Grace. Merry Christmas. Don't forget, we have pancakes. Love, Lily." Grace's lips trembled into a smile. She pressed the note to her chest, holding it there for a moment, overwhelmed by the tenderness in such a simple gesture. When she finally stepped out of the guest house, snow crunched beneath her feet. The main house glowed with warmth, smoke curling from the chimney. Inside, laughter spilled into the air, Lily's giggles, high and pure, mixed with Ethan's deeper chuckle. Grace paused at the doorway, watching. Ethan stood at the stove, a spatula in hand, while Lily sat at the counter, pouring an unreasonable amount of syrup over her pancakes. The scene was so ordinary, so beautiful, that Grace felt her chest ache with a longing she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Ethan noticed her first. His smile reached his eyes. "Good morning, Grace. Sleep well?" Grace nodded, her voice shaky but warm. "Better than I have in a long time." Lily clapped her syrup-sticky hands together. "Come sit next to me. Daddy makes the best pancakes." Grace hesitated for only a second before sliding into the chair. Ethan set a plate in front of her, piled with pancakes dusted with powdered sugar. For the first time in forever, Grace didn't feel like an outsider, sneaking into someone else's joy. She felt like she belonged. As she took her first bite, Ethan leaned on the counter across from her, his gaze steady but soft. "Grace, I meant what I said last night. This house, it's not just mine and Lily's anymore. If you're willing, it can be yours too." Grace looked at him, then at Lily, whose bright eyes watched her as if the whole world depended on her answer. Her throat tightened with emotion. And though the words came out in a whisper, they carried the weight of years of loneliness finally breaking apart. I'd like that." Lily squealed, nearly toppling her orange juice. Ethan laughed, and Grace, for the first time in years, laughed too. Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside, Grace had found warmth, family, and a home. The rest of Christmas Day unfolded like something out of a dream. For Grace, every moment felt both surreal and achingly real, like she had stepped into a life she never thought she deserved. After breakfast, Lily dragged her into the living room, where twinkling lights danced across the tree. She insisted on showing Grace every ornament, some handmade from preschool, some belonging to Ethan's late wife, each with a story. Grace listened, her fingers tracing the delicate glass and wood, her heart swelling with the way Ethan's voice softened whenever Lily interrupted him with her eager explanations. Then came the games. Board games scattered across the coffee table, Lily squealing when she won, groaning dramatically when she lost. Grace laughed until her stomach hurt, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in years. Ethan kept looking at her, every glance filled with quiet wonder, as if he couldn't believe she was sitting there, part of this moment. By afternoon, they bundled up and went outside. The snow had settled thick and glittering over the yard, and Lily immediately demanded a snowman. The three of them worked together, rolling the heavy balls of snow, stacking them high, and decorating with a scarf, buttons, and a carrot nose. Lily named him Sir Frosty the Brave. Grace giggled, her cheeks red from the cold, and Ethan thought she looked more alive than he had ever seen her. When Lily collapsed into the snow to make snow angels, Grace knelt beside her, their arms brushing as they waved their hands and feet against the ground. Ethan stood a few feet away, watching, a smile tugging at his lips, as if he were witnessing something sacred. Later, as the sun dipped low, painting the snow in gold and pink, they returned inside. A Christmas movie played in the background while they sipped hot cocoa topped with whipped cream and marshmallows. Lily leaned sleepily against Grace, her head tucked against her arm, while Ethan draped a blanket over them both. In that quiet moment, surrounded by warmth, Grace's heart whispered something she hadn't dared believe in years. This is home. Ethan caught her gaze over Lily's head. He didn't speak, but he didn't have to. The look in his eyes told her everything, that this day wasn't a fleeting miracle, but the beginning of something lasting. And as the night came to a close, with Lily tucked in bed and the fire glowing low, Grace realized the truth. This Christmas hadn't just given her shelter. It had given her a family. The snow fell softly again, just like it had the year before. But this time, the scene inside Ethan's house was different. Laughter echoed through the halls, brighter and fuller, because the family who had been pieced together by fate was now whole. Grace stood in the kitchen, pulling a tray of cookies from the oven. The sweet smell of cinnamon and sugar filled the air. Her hair was tied back loosely, flour dusting her cheek, and she looked over at Lily, who was decorating cookies at the counter with sprinkles scattered everywhere. "Mom, look! I made this one for you," Lily said, proudly, holding up a crooked star-shaped cookie. Grace's chest tightened at that word, Mom. It had been months since Lily had first called her that, and still, every time, it felt like a gift she never wanted to let go of. From the living room, Ethan's deep chuckle drifted in. He was setting up the tree, carefully unboxing the ornaments. When Grace joined him, she saw he had added something new to the collection, a silver ornament shaped like a heart, engraved with the words, "Our First Christmas Together." She traced her fingers over the inscription, tears filling her eyes. "You kept it," she whispered. "Of course," Ethan said softly, pulling her into his arms. It was the start of everything. That evening, neighbors stopped by with greetings and carols. Grace smiled as she welcomed them in, no longer the woman shivering on the streets, but someone who belonged, someone loved. She had found not only shelter, but purpose, She volunteered at the local shelter now, helping others the way Ethan had once helped her. As night fell, the three of them gathered by the fire again, just like the Christmas before. Lily curled between them, her small voice drowsy with happiness. "This is the best Christmas ever," she murmured. Grace kissed her forehead and whispered back, "It's only the beginning." Ethan wrapped his arm around Grace, and together they watched the firelight dance, their hearts steady with the promise of forever. Outside, the world lay hushed beneath the snow, but inside, in this little home, a miracle had taken root, a miracle of love, family, and second chances. And it all began with a single night, a single act of kindness, and the courage to open their hearts.